rate's too low. But the fact of the matter is, let's see what that means to the average consumer. How about go to the next slide? What I've done here is I've taken the average price of all those investor-owned utility companies, just as an example. And when I just, you saw the numbers, I just added them all up and I divided by the total. The average is about 8.3. And interestingly enough, that's about exactly what I pay at my house. I pay about 8.2, 8.3 cents a kilowatt hour. Now let's compare that to the next slide, which is Central's price, 8.3 and 6.7. We talk about all these numbers, but it's hard to know what they mean from a budget perspective. So let me tell you, what I did might not have been very scientific. I just went in and figured out how many kilowatt hours the average Central member uses on a monthly basis. I multiplied it times the difference. I multiplied it times 12 months. What that means is if you're a Central customer, you're paying about $200 less a year. $200 less a year than the average IOU customer. You're paying about $200 less a year for your generation than I am. And I thought I knew a little something about generation. That tells me I'd love to be a Central customer. They won't serve me. And in fact, that's kind of one of the closing points here, is what we're finding is, I don't know how many of you were around 15 years ago or something. I will admit that I was around 15 years ago. It's true, Matt. 15 years ago or something, this wasn't the case here for co-ops. It was a tough time, and your rates were significantly higher than others. It was a terrible time. I spoke here at one of those meetings, and it was not a happy situation. But things have turned around. And interestingly enough, in those days, all anybody wanted to do was find out how they could switch away from Central. How can I become a West Penn customer or a Penelec customer or something like that? Central was too expensive. The interesting thing is, we got in the last 2 months 2 calls from real estate agents from up in this area. And they said, we would like to be able to put in our brochures when we're selling properties that the houses are in Central service territory as opposed to the high-priced investor-owned utility service territory. How can we do that? The answer is you can't. And the reason you can't is because Central has made the decision, along with the other cooperatives in Pennsylvania, that this cheap power, and it is very cheap power, is because of a lot of decisions over a lot of years, and a lot of the members lived through a lot of tough times when costs were higher. So it's not appropriate now for Central to go turn around through Allegheny and sell their cheap power to other peoples that just want to jump in now because it's cheap. So the concept that we have is, rather than trying to build our market share, we're trying to make sure we keep the lowest price for the existing consumers out there. Well, I think I've told you about how the whole electric deregulation thing started. I tried to tell you about Central's role in electric deregulation. And the last thing I tried to tell you, and hopefully I got it across, is there's a reason that you don't have alternative electric generation companies coming and knocking on your door. And I'll be really honest with you, I don't expect you to have any of them for a very, very, very long time. That's good news and bad news. The bad news is you won't get all the junk mail. I guess that's bad news. The good news is you've got the lowest rates anywhere in the region, in this region of the United States. And that's a good thing. And I will tell you, the board here is responsible for that. Matt and the board, they come down. I'm going to close on that moment. I tell you, I wish I could come out every year and give these kinds of presentations. They're the fun ones to give. Thank you very much.
Very much, Frank. That was an excellent presentation, especially since it ended with you saying how wonderful our board is. That was a good thing. Although I did take from that you need to become a cooperative member someplace, is what I take from that. Before I go to our questions from the floor, I did want to ask, does this podium look a bit like a doghouse? Because I'm afraid the person that I neglected to introduce earlier may end up staying in my lovely wife who's joined us this afternoon is not wearing up in the front row over there. without the support of her and my family, certainly this one, working here would be much more difficult. At this point, I would like to ask whoever's going to run around with microphones to run around with microphones. Do we have any questions? Those who chose not to submit questions in advance, we're opening up the floor now to any questions you might have and we might be able to answer. See if there's any hands waving. There's one right over here.
Will there be anything special going on for the 75th meeting? It'll be like a special event?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, the question was whether there be anything special going on for our 75th anniversary next year. And yes, we certainly, some of what you're experiencing today will be similar, but if you didn't notice over there's a big sign over there that says share your experiences with the video. We're putting together a 75th anniversary video and we've included former employees, former board members, current members, former members, people that were here when the lights came on, and everybody in between. So certainly that will be something we want to share with you next year. And we're in the process of planning what all will be included. And we're actually going to be asking that question of all of you over the course of the next year. What would you like to see in your 75th anniversary as well? So yes.
If you could switch all your utilities over, your hot water tank, everything electric, is there a special rate for doing that? You know what I mean? Like you already have gas, you switch it over to electric.
I am at a blank. I don't think so. We don't have an a special all electric rate, no. We do have, there's certain things we can do with, we have certain advantages to having all electric, but electric heat, for instance, restricts some things we can do. So, no, we don't have a special rate for that. I see waving arms only, but that's just to keep you cool. So if there are no other questions, then I will move on to the next piece. And that is the introduction of our attorney, Mike Slow, Central's legal counsel, and he will explain the election procedure. Thank you all.
I'll be going over the election and nomination process for this year. Your cooperative board consists of 8 directors. The directors are elected from the cooperative membership from the districts of the counties which it serves. The eligibility requirements for serving as a director are provided in your bylaws and in your member handbook. You can find the bylaws and member handbook on the cooperative's website at www.central.coop. As each board of directors is elected for a term of 4 years, there are 2 seats up for election each year. Earlier this year, members from Forest and Venango counties were invited through an issue of the power lines to petition to run for those seats. To ensure that the petitioners are eligible, what the board does is they appoint members to a nominating committee. The nominating committee reviews the petitions to verify that the petitioners are qualified in accordance with the bylaws and state regulations. Those qualifying are automatically nominated and their names are